Hey, everybody, Off the Mic Sports Network here. Another edition of Off the Top Rope. So we're heading into Double or Nothing. Almost, literally. Let me actually check the dates here. So yeah, May 25th. Yeah, it's literally going to be exactly 6 years to the day. 6 years to the day that AEW debuted with Double or Nothing on pay-per-view from Las Vegas, Nevada. They're going to be at the Desert Diamond Arena in Glendale, Arizona. There's been a lot of talk in AEW this year about restoring the feeling and, getting back to what made AEW so great again. And listen, it's no secret that I've been very critical of this company, specifically in the last couple of years on this channel, and really in the last, like I'd say about calendar year on this channel, since we started doing a lot of wrestling content here. I've been very critical because a lot of this is just not connecting with me as much as it used to in the day. And a couple things can be true here. Number one, I don't really recognize the creative and the storytelling from what was going on 6 years ago. The other part of this is I think the magic pixie dust of, Vince McMahon was terrible at running creative and the creative was bad, and anything that AEW was going to put on was really going to be significantly better. And they had like really a nice little honeymoon period, and they were bringing in all these cool stars. It was a different style of wrestling. It was more catered to the wrestling fan. So it's like, that's when I harp on AEW for what it's become. I think it hasn't evolved. And when you look at basically just all the metrics in terms of television ratings, the television ratings are down year over year from where they were 6 years ago. The attendance, we're looking at, they may get to 7,500, maybe 8,000 people. They had at least 11,000 people, maybe 12, 13 at the MGM Grand Garden Arena 6 years ago for AEW Double or Nothing. And think about where we are right now with this card that has been put together by just a bunch of, I'm hitting the microphone. It's been thrown together with a bunch of duct tape, and it's being held together by a bunch of Scotch tape. It's really poorly put together. But let me do something here and let me put it together in exercise, and let's compare and contrast. Because like I said, part of the problem to me really is in terms of restoring the feeling. I don't think you're ever going to get back to that because, one, Cody Rhodes is not there. He was a big creative voice in the building. And it's just like the stories that you had, you're not hanging on to. And there's nobody else that you're able to put over and that magic pixie dust. And maybe there's a creative window for them to get in because let's be real, WWE's creative and a lot of what they've been doing pretty much, for most of this year has been, kind of subpar given the standards that we've expected from Triple H, but yet AEW seems to just be content with not changing anything and just being who they are, which on some level I can respect, but here we are. So anyway, okay, let's get into this. So Double or Nothing from Vegas in 2019. You had Adam Page win the Casino Battle Royal on the 0 hour, or they called it the buy-in. He last eliminated MJF in that one. That was actually a great moment. I remember Adam Page was actually supposed to face Pac at this pay-per-view, but Pac had a visa issue. So they threw Adam Page into this Casino Gauntlet winner, not the Casino Gauntlet, Casino Battle Royale winner. A lot of cool names showed up in that really kind of shaped at least the groundwork for AEW. And Adam Page was the Joker in this. He wins. He gets to be a part of the inaugural AEW World Championship match. And Chris Jarrett, and we'll get to this like further down the line, that was determined in the main event of who he was facing. Kip Sabian beat Sammy Guevara in 10 minutes on the kickoff show. Look at where those two guys are. Sammy Guevara is barely seen on television. He's actually going to be on this card at the pay-per-view, which is very interesting, in a tag team with Dustin Rhodes. So, hey, at least some continuity from this show. But yeah, Kip Sabian, how about that? Then you had SoCal Uncensored, Christopher Daniels, Frankie Kazarian, and Scorpio Sky beating the Stronghearts, which is Shima, T-Hawk, and L. Lindemann. I don't know who those guys were, but SCU was very fun. Christopher Daniels is not wrestling anymore. Frankie Kazarian's in TNA. And Scorpio Sky, I have no idea what, there were some quotes that Scorpio Sky has basically been parked for 2 years. Like, I don't get that. But, hey, fun little match. SCU is a fun little trios tag team. Then you had the first women's match. Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. She wins a match with Nyla Rose. Kylie Ray, that's a story. Kylie Ray's now in Evolve for WWE and Awesome Kong. Brandy Rhodes actually introduced Awesome Kong as a part of that match. Cool 4-way match with the women. But very interestingly enough, that none of these women are featured prominently on AEW television as part of the women's division anymore. Awesome Kong is effectively retired. Nyla Rose you can't even find her. She's basically like a gatekeeper for whoever the world champion is. As I said, Kylie Ray is in WWE, and Britt Baker is probably going to be in WWE at some point very soon as well, because I think her leash has kind of run out in WWE or in AEW. The best friends when they were cool. Chuck Taylor's now retired. Trent Beretta is now a heel with Roppongi Vice. They take on Angelico and Jack Evans in a tag match. You had another women's match. Hikaru Shida, Ryo Mizunami against Aja Kong, Emi Sakura, and Yuka Sakazaki. So it's like, listen, they were kind of still in the infancy phase of AEWs, but I can kind of respect, at least with this, because we didn't really have to see this. So seeing it now, it's like, okay, can kind of see why, maybe some people are still into it. Then you had the Cody Rhodes, Dustin Rhodes match, brother versus brother, which was a bloodbath. It was, to me, to this day, still maybe the best AEW match of all time. This was outstanding. Outstanding storytelling. Cody getting his brother back at his corner. The Rhodes brothers reunite. This really kind of, I think, rejuvenated Dustin Rhodes' career. It's kind of crazy that 6 years later, Dustin Rhodes is going to be on the pay-per-view as a tag team champion, and his brother has already been a WWE champion going back to the other place. Young Bucks face the Lucha Brothers. Do we need it for the AAA World Tag Team Champions? Here's a side note on this. The AAA, I didn't even think about this before doing this video. Rey Fenix and Penta are both in WWE. AAA is now a part of WWE. That's how far away we've gotten from this. Like, holy mackerel. But that match was incredible. Great storytelling with great story. And then Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega is really the whole reason why this thing started. This was when Chris Jericho was really at his peak of coolness, going over to Japan. And Chris Jericho ended up winning this and then going on to All Out to win and become the first ever AEW World Champion. So that's what happened in 2019. I'd say it's a pretty decent card, but I think it was kind of helped by the fact that it was the new thing on the block. So you put that side by side with what's going on this Sunday. Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford versus Anna Jay and Harley Cameron. Cool women's match. Megan Bayne should be in a much bigger spot than she should be. You've got an Owen Hart Cup tournament championship for the women. Jamie Hayter and Mercedes Moné. Jamie Hayter wasn't on the show. Mercedes Moné at the time of AEW's inaugural launch, she was away for, I think it was like a mental health break that she took because she was pissed off at losing the women's tag team titles. Hurt Syndicate. Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin were in WWE in 2019. Dustin Rhodes and Sammy Guevara were both on the initial. Like, that's a crazy match. Tony Storm was still in NXT at this point, taking on Mina Shirakawa, who was in Japan at this point. FTR was still in WWE at that point. Daniel Garcia hadn't even gotten to AEW. Nigel McGuinness was a commentator in NXT at that point. Ricochet is facing Mark Briscoe on this show. Mark Briscoe was still in Ring of Honor. Ricochet was in WWE. Then you've got Kenny Omega, Swerve Strickland, Willow Nightingale, and the Ops, Samoa Joe, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Katsuyori Shibata. So Omega was initially a part of the real. Swerve was still in NXT. Willow, I can't even remember where she was. Joe was, we didn't know who Powerhouse Hobbs was. I think Shibata was actually retired at the time of the initial pay-per-view, but it's just, you look at this, Anarchy in the Arena was not even a thing at this point. Claudio was Cesaro. Marina Shafir was still in NXT. Wheeler Yuta, I don't know if he had gotten a WWE. And then you've got the Bucks. Okada was still running roughshod in Japan. Speedball Mike Bailey, I don't even know if he had gotten a TNA at that point. Let's keep going down the card. Hangman Adam Page, who was in the first ever AEW match, is now got a chance to go for another world championship. So at least there's some consistency here. But, Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roderick Strong, they were all in NXT at this point. Kyle Fletcher, we didn't know much about him. Josh Alexander was still in TNA. Takeshita was the young prospect. But there's not a whole... Let me just put it to you this way. There's not really a whole lot different. Like, there's, in terms of, like, the styles of these matches, there's not a whole lot different with AEW. I will say this. There is not a lot of original talent there anymore. You see what I mentioned when going down the list of all those things? A lot of ex-WWE people, a lot of external hires, a lot of talent. Like, not a lot of people have carried over or in the same prominent positions as they were 6 years ago. The one thing that I will say that's very consistent and why I will continue to beat the drum that Hangman Adam Page absolutely should win on Sunday. Look at what happened. He was in the very first match at the very first AEW show, Double or Nothing, 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago to the day. He's now in the exact same position with a chance to win another world title shot at the biggest show of the year. Do the right thing, AEW. But my whole point about illustrating these two things side by side is this company really hasn't changed. The one thing that they've changed from their mindset is, okay, we're going to go and bring in all the big name talent that's not being used at the other place, and we're going to put them in prominent positions, whether people like it or not. And it hasn't netted out as well as they could. They're still the same kind of company that they were before, and really the emphasis more on the in-ring style of product. But all this talk about restoring the feeling, you need to stop trying to restore the feeling, and you need to start, like, thinking of a new pathway forward to get yourself more interest, because whatever you were doing 6 years ago, which is what they're trying to go back to. And like I said, when you stack these things side by side, take out all the ex-WWE talent and the lack of carryover. This is the same company it was 6 years ago. And 6 years ago, it worked out just fine because, hey, NXT was like kind of the cool thing with WWE. Vince McMahon's creative was awful. Like, getting through a WWE show in 2019 was a chore. It was a chore to get through. I think that 2019, that was the year of Stomping Grounds. You guys remember Stomping Grounds? They had that in Tacoma, Washington, and almost nobody went to it. This was the year of just some of the worst creative. Brock Lesnar won Money in the Bank this year in 2019. That's how bad we were at. They were starved for he beat Kofi Kingston in 6 seconds on SmackDown, which was like the same week as the first Dynamite. That's what was going on. So Tony Khan could get away with that because, hey, it was the novelty, it was the cool new thing. Here we are 6 years later. There's almost no effort being put into this. It's basically kind of the same shit that they were doing 6 years ago, but the novelty and just I'm not going to say star power, but the pixie dust, the magic pixie dust is off. It's off of it. And so when I say that this is a bad card, it is a bad card, but it also doesn't help that, the same, mystique and I'm not going to say aura, but the intrigue, that's the word that we could look for here. The intrigue of a new company, it's not there anymore. And you can't continue to do the same shit that you were doing 6 years ago and talk about restoring the feeling because people don't care. The only people that do care are the diehards who haven't given up on you. And, hey, you're still able to hold that audience in, but it's a very niche audience, and that's not going to net anything out for you. And again, it doesn't help that Cody Rhodes isn't there anymore. I think that's a bigger issue than people are going to realize, but it doesn't help that you haven't stuck to your core, your core roster that you started from day one. It doesn't help that some of the core pieces that you still have there are at their weakest form, Jon Moxley being one of them. But again, it goes back to what I said. You look at that card from 2019 and look at this card in 2025. The one constant that is there is Hangman Adam Page in the World Championship. I swear to God, I will potentially come on here and scream if Hangman Adam Page does not win the Owen Cup. Because as much as I love Will Ospreay, and I think he's a fantastic professional wrestler and he has earned a lot in his career, this is not the time to crown him as the guy. It has to be Hangman, especially looking at the card and just the parallels to where we got to from 6 years ago to now. That's your best story. If you don't capitalize on that, you're spitting in the face of your fans. So I'm telling you guys, do the right thing. I'm not going to be the only one who's going to be upset. Believe me, there are diehards who are even bigger sickos than me that will be infuriated if Hangman Adam Page does not win this match on Sunday. But again, I just don't think the pixie dust is there. So stop trying to restore the feeling and try to ignite a new fire. That's really my point on this whole thing. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.